What's up, everybody? Welcome on into the Thursday sports edition of the Slate. Adam Kaufman, Jeff Ulrich, Gary, and Thorne. We're going to be heavy on NFL with Thursday Night Football and actually, hopefully, a good primetime game coming your way on Amazon tonight between, obviously, the Baltimore Ravens, who could be a contender in the AFC, and in the NFC, Tom Brady. If the Buccaneers can get themselves out of their rut that they're in, they're a team that everybody always wants to take seriously, having won the Super Bowl a couple years ago. Plus, big injury news, Jamar Chase. Yeah, if you've got him in season long, I'm sorry. Put him on the IR. He's out 4 to 6 weeks. We'll get to that in a little bit. Mix in maybe some hockey, some World Series talk, whatever we have time for in the next 30, 40 minutes. Thanks for being with us, boys. It's good to see you. Let's start with the football tonight. And Gary, and we'll begin with you. First off, will this be a good game? Is this something we should be excited about? Because maybe it's just because football's back. I'm amped. I'm ready.
I mean, it's a low bar to clear. But on paper, this is probably the best matchup we've had in the last month on Thursday Night Football. So that's a good starting point, I would say. And you've also got, two relatively hungry teams. These are not teams that can rest on their laurels right now. Although I think the Buccaneers, as we've kind of addressed earlier in the week, 8 wins might take down the NFC South. So I don't know how hungry they are necessarily, but, this is the talking point you heard all week. And even during the broadcast, of that Buccaneers Panthers game this is the lowest point of the Tom Brady era in Tampa Bay. So he's probably going to want to bounce back in a relatively big way. Seems like the Buccaneers are relatively healthy. I mean, obviously they're still missing Cam Brate. Russell Gage is not playing, but we have reports that Julio Jones will be back in the lineup tonight. So, a lot of weapons for them to utilize there. And on Baltimore's side, we still have some question marks about who's going to be available for them tonight. Some big names questionable. We also had the report coming out from Skip Bayless today that apparently Lamar Jackson is holding out without holding out and maybe not giving it his all. So there's a lot of layers to this game. There's a lot of star power in this game. I think it's actually going to be a pretty good one.
This one is in Tampa. The Bucs are favored by 2 on the DraftKings Sportsbook. The over-under, it's not like it's sub 40 like some of these primetime games we've talked about. It's 46.5 right now. Jeff, building on what Garion was talking about, maybe, just maybe, we could actually see Tom Brady out there and play angry a little bit. And when I say angry, I don't mean angry like doing this and shaking his head at his teammates. I mean, play angry, play with a little gumption, a little zest, some of what we haven't seen at points this year. Play like Antonio Brown is out there selling T-shirts with his and your, maybe soon to be ex-wife face on it. That's the kind of anger we want from Tom Brady on the field tonight.
I think you mean play good is what I think you're trying to say. So, which he hasn't really done this year. So, it's Gary alluded to it. Like, this is a big game for Tampa in a lot of ways. I mean, they're very blessed this year that they have potentially the weakest division in football. I mean, they're being chased by Atlanta, which is not very scary. The Saints are melting as we speak. And, Carolina is Carolina. So, I mean, there's time here, but this does feel like kind of a bit of a Waterloo for their offense. I do think that they're going to get it together tonight. I think that you're going to see them move the ball a little bit more. I think they'll probably adjust. My suspicion is you're going to see Rachaad White use a little bit more in the passing game, a little quick hitters to get that opened up. Their O-line, though, has been giving them a lot of issues. It's been forcing Brady to rush a little bit. But when you look at these two teams as a whole, they're actually the healthier team right now. Baltimore has a lot of injury issues. And then you've got this Lamar Jackson thing, which I kind of, I think if you read the tea leaves, you could almost see this coming in a way. Team wouldn't commit to him. I have no idea why. What are you waiting for on the other side? And, Baltimore is okay, but maybe he's thinking about greener pastures. So I don't know. It's a lot of things going on at this game. Should be an okay game. I think there is a possibility that if Tampa's offense sucks again, we just get Baltimore run heavy and it actually ends up being a boring game. But I don't think that'll happen. I think Tampa will move the ball a bit and it'll probably come down to how efficient Lamar can be and if he can pull one off.
Well, as Garion said, Julio Jones is expected to play. He has missed the last 3 games with an injury, although he's not anything can happen, obviously. But in terms of projections, he's not expected to be all that impactful tonight. I think only projected for somewhere in the neighborhood of 6-7 points, something like that. We do have some news. Mark Andrews with the knee, Gus Edwards with the knee, Rashad Bateman, the foot. They are all expected to be available tonight. That's according to ESPN's Adam Schefter. So, Jeff, as we look at potential plays tonight, whether it's prop bets that jump out at you or obviously lineup building with a millionaire contest available to the people out there on DraftKings, which we can talk a little bit more about, you do have some expensive plays. It's not one of those games where there's a couple of guys, obvious plays, and then everything else, it's who's your value. Tonight you got to really think about who you're going to fade, because if you wanted to captain somebody expensive, be it a Tom Brady or a Lamar Jackson, guys that will in all likelihood be very popular captains, you have them. You have Chris Godwin, Leonard Fournette, Andrews, I mentioned, Mike Evans is pricey. And then you start to get into the Batemans of the world and Gus Edwards as well. You can't fit everybody. So who do you like versus those you're fading?
So, look, Lamar Jackson is in the game. So he's the top projected play. It's pretty obvious. He is expensive. So, you can obviously make lineups with Lamar Jackson tonight. And I think there is enough cheaper value. We lose a little bit of the value with Mark Andrews getting in there, but if you go down the board, there's still playable players. The Justice Hill could pop up with some touches. He's been doing that. So I think Jackson is absolutely fine. Baltimore's been running the ball more. I expect them to run the ball a lot tonight. I don't think Andrews is anywhere near 100%. So his target share could be down. They threw the ball 16 times in the last game, I think it was. So I expect them to try and do something similar here. At the same time, I'm more inclined to go down and use someone from Tampa. It's tough. It's just, if you go off Lamar, it is tough to go. I would say Mike Evans is probably your best bet here. The secondary for the Ravens wasn't that good to begin with. And now there's injury issues. I think Evans is just, he knows what happened last week. He's on Sports Center fumbling the ball 20 feet in the air when it should have been a walk-in touchdown. I think it's a pretty clear bounce back spot for a veteran wide receiver. I don't know what's going on with Chris Godwin, but him and Brady, for whatever reason, can't get on the same page. He's also, Godwin's ADOT's been shorter for whatever. I like Evans here as the Tampa captain.
All these guys are projected to be owned in 50% of lineups or more, basically. Jackson, top of the line at right around 65%. And that's in total between captain and obviously the flex. But he, Brady, Godwin, Fournette, Andrews, Evans, they're all 45% of lineups and up. So what about you, Garion?
This is one of those slates that really kind of just gives you a little bit of everything. My two favorite captain archetypes, I would say, on a showdown slate are dual threat quarterback, which you have arguably the best in football in Lamar Jackson, and then bell cow running back, which I would say Leonard Fournette is sort of, one of a dying breed, really. Even the qualifications for what a bell cow running back is have changed so drastically in the last 2 or 3, even 4 years. Coming into week 8, Fournette is one of just 4 running backs who is playing at least 70% of his team's offensive snaps. It used to be 85% was the threshold for a bell cow back. Now 70% is wow, that guy's on the field almost all the time. That's the greatest part you can have now as a running back. But I think Fournette, Jeff mentioned on Twitter today, and I agree that Fournette's target share, his amount of routes run have kind of gone down the last couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. For the season as a whole, he's still top 5 among all running backs in touches, top 5 in targets. He's over 600 scrimmage yards. He's got the goal line carries locked down. It's a dream scenario for Leonard Fournette. And maybe it's trending a little in the wrong direction. I know he's coming off his worst performance of the season against Carolina. Granted, I think a lot of that had to do with game script, but Fournette is just someone who, in general, I would say, even if you want to remove his name from this and just call him Buccaneers running back, anytime you can get a quote unquote bell cow running back on a showdown slate for less than 9K, I feel like you just have to blindly do it. His price should be higher based on what his role is, even if he is coming off a bad week. So almost from a value added perspective, I just think Fournette has to be someone you consider at that captain spot, because it does open up money on a slate where there isn't kind of that slam dunk $1,000 flex play that can save you so much money. Like, if Mark Andrews doesn't play, Isaiah Likely is suddenly saving everyone money. And that's fine because, you can differentiate at the top with who you're using with that saved money. But I think Fournette on Tampa's side. And then again, Lamar Jackson, like, I know the production hasn't been Lamar-esque the past couple of weeks. I think he's had under 20 DraftKings points in each of his last 4 starts. At the same time, even with the diminished production, even with the fact he's only thrown 3 touchdown passes and hasn't run for a touchdown in the last 4 games, he's still averaging the most DraftKings points per dropback of any quarterback in the NFL. Like, he's still Lamar Jackson, even when he hasn't been the best version of Lamar Jackson so far this season. So it's hard to ignore that just flat out crazy ceiling that he offers that really no one else on this slate does, even a Tom Brady, just because there is no rushing dynamic to Brady's game. So those are probably my 2 favorite choices for captain, just because of popularity and price. I think I'm kind of leaning as Fournette as my favorite on this particular slate.
Lamar's recent struggles from a fantasy perspective doesn't alarm you at all. And I don't ask that from the standpoint of like, hey, you want to fade this guy? I mean, some people will for the sake of differentiation, obviously, but most people will not. He'll be in the bulk of lineups. Like I said, he'll be a popular captain. He's projected to be captain about 12% of lineups, same as Brady. Godwin is right there. Andrews, Fournette, all in low double figures. But with what he's done, I'm looking at the game log right now. I mean, his last 4 games, he's topped out at 18 fantasy points. He's had between 10 and 15. Now, I know it's a small sample, but at the same time, it's kind of not. It's a 7-week season so far, and the last 4 have been subpar. Does that worry you at all going against a Bucs defense that is at least has some shades of what it used to be?
Well, again, I feel like I just outlined this where, yes, he's struggling, but even with the struggles, his production for the season is the best among any quarterback from an efficiency standpoint. He's got 240 burgers. Like, what his ceiling is.
Sure.
And on a 1-game slate, I think I'm more swayed by ceiling than floor on a showdown slate. That's kind of just how you roll. Okay. Especially when, again, it seems like Lamar's floor is 15 DraftKings points. I would say I'm less worried about what Lamar is individually bringing to the table when it comes to Lamar's value than I am some of these, secondary pieces being hurt. Like, how much of Lamar's success in the passing game is explicitly tied to Mark Andrews being able to get open and catch passes? Like, is Andrews' injury last week and the fact he was clearly hobbled, was that more of the reason Lamar struggled than just, it was a bad game, Cleveland stepped up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Like, does he need a healthy Mark Jackson to reach his ceiling? That's maybe more the worry that I would have with Lamar, as opposed to like, he's been cold the last couple of weeks. Again, his ability to hit that 40 DraftKings point upside is just something that is always going to keep me coming back to the table. So I would say the injuries are maybe more worrisome than the recent performance.
Jeff, is there any scenario, and I asked this because I was looking at some optimal lineups, the top handful going into this game as projections sit right now. And there are some versions that, and again, very high up, like we're talking about differences in one projection versus another of like tenths of a point. You know what I mean? There's some versions of an optimal lineup that have both kickers in there. In some cases might have one kicker captain so that obviously you can load up in your flex with more expensive plays. What's your kicker approach? Not just to showdowns, obviously, in general, but specifically this game when you have guys like Tucker and Suckup that are so reliable.
My kicker approach is to not play kickers in showdown, to be honest.
It's okay. I'm
legit.
There's been enough
serious.
success with them, though.
I mean, yeah, people can have success with them, but it's generally not especially when you have some legit players up top. Like if you're playing, let's talk about scenarios where the kickers will pay off, I guess. I mean, obviously like Tampa's offense probably not getting going. We're getting maybe a Godwin 10 catch game on 80 yards. Lamar Jackson's probably getting some rush yards. And then you're piling in the kickers, I guess. It could happen. Maybe Gus Edwards gets in there, but no, I mean, looking down, I mean, I think Suckup is probably the more like if you're gonna go with one of the kickers, it would be Suck Up because the Bucs are at home. They've got a slightly bigger implied team total, but I think that there's again, like we got Justice Hill down there. So Suck Up is definitely you could mix in, but no, I mean I'm not necessarily of the opinion that like the kickers here are like exceedingly great value.
Your point is if you're in a millionaire contest and you're chasing big money and you've got, hundreds of thousands of people you're competing with, you're not taking the quote unquote safe points. You're going with the Justice Hills of the world and taking swings.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Garion?
Yeah. I mean, look, these are two offenses that so far this season have sort of played into their kickers' hands. I'll say that. Like these are two talented offenses that can move the ball between the 20s that have not been finishing drives in the end zone, which is why, you see Ryan Succop's got 16 made field goals already and and Tucker's got 14 made field goals already. Like I understand why these guys would be appealing. And I'm not going to out and out say like, I will not play Justin Tucker tonight. That's a bad idea. Because at the very least, Tucker also provides you with that sort of interesting level of trust that the Ravens seem to have in him, where we're seeing more and more coaches have become more aggressive going for it on fourth down. When the ball's sort of in between that, 45 to 60 yard field goal range, you'll see a lot of coaches now, going for it on fourth down and keeping their offense on the field, where the Ravens, depending on the situation, what the score dictates, they're pretty comfortable saying like, we're not worried. We're going to flip this field position over and give the Bucs the ball at the 40. We know Justin Tucker is going to make this 56 yarder. So those big 5-point kicks are on the table. Again, I'm sort of more in the Jeff vein of this, where I tend to like taking bigger swings with position players, but I wouldn't call them bad options tonight, just considering
they're very good kickers. I mean, we have two good kickers and we do have two offenses who have been stalling out. So there's probably a far better argument for kickers tonight than like there has been on most showdown slates this year. Absolutely.
When it comes to value, I think, we've mentioned the name Isaiah Likely, who, again, is just based on his price point, obviously. And you look at the flex, he's coming in at $1,600. He's not going to be exceedingly popular, though it feels like kind of that he should be. His ownership projection right now is only sitting at right around 9%, which is far and away the highest for a guy who's priced anywhere near where he's priced, obviously. But is he kind of the obvious low priced? I don't want to call him a punt play necessarily, because there's real potential to actually do something. It's not like he's $400 or something, Garion. But if you're looking at his value versus just, a more balanced lineup and ignoring guys that cheap to begin with, what's your approach?
I mean, Likely's in a really weird spot. Like I said, he might have been the most popular non-star, quote unquote, on this slate had Mark Andrews been ruled out. But with Andrews playing, you're not 100% sure what his role is going to be. I mean, Baltimore is not a team that is going to drop back to pass 35, 40 times in this game unless they're really going in a negative script. And even then, not every drop back is created the same when it comes to target share. Like, if Tom Brady's dropping back, Tom Brady is dropping back a ton. He leads the league in passing attempts since week 3. But, if Tom Brady's dropping back, he's dropping back to pass. If the Ravens are dropping back, it's about like a 60% chance they're going to throw the ball and a 40% chance Lamar's going to scramble. So there's just not that many targets to go around. There's not that many routes to be run. Likely has at least caught a pass each of the last 3 weeks. So there is an element of floor here for someone who is as cheap as he is. There's the chance that Mark Andrews, who again did not look good, like just watching that game, he didn't look like himself against the Browns. Maybe we're in kind of like decoy territory here. It's kind of weird to think about that with a tight end as opposed to a wide receiver, but maybe Andrews plays the first series or two and then is like, look, I'm just not there. Like, and Likely's the better option. And Harbaugh realizes that. And maybe you get Likely at an ownership dip because people decided like, hey, now that Andrews is active, I can't use this guy like I thought I would. So there is that potential path. And I don't necessarily hate him in that capacity. It's not quite the like, I'm going to play the backup quarterback level of showdown, big braining yourself. But I think there is a path here to Mark Andrews not playing his usual allotment of snaps, which he's usually a guy who's playing like 90%. So even if it's down at like 60 tonight and likely is picking up 15 to 20 snaps at this price point, I think he's perfectly viable. But I would say the other tight end is probably your way to go if you're looking for like a quote unquote value play. I know he's 3 times as expensive, but Cade Otton is just in a great spot. I mean, I mentioned it. The Buccaneers, no quarterback has as many passing attempts the last 5 weeks as Tom Brady. I mean, he is well over 230 in that span of time. So even though you're going to get Chris Godwin with a 30% target share and Mike Evans with a 30% target share, it just seems like that's still going to leave 6 to 8 targets for Otton. And he's also going to be a red zone threat. So that's, again, he's going to be super popular, but I think that's like your big value play. If you want security, if you want to risk it a little bit more, you could talk yourself into likely. Sure.
Jeff, if you're considering value, and I'm not even talking about the Cade Ottons of the world, keeping it to like sub 2K, and you've got Likely, you've got Ricard, you've got Perriman, you've got Rudolph. You could mix in some of these guys that are even sub 1,000. I know you said you like Justice Hill, but he's a little more expensive at 2,400. Who of these value guys stands out most to you?
I mean, I would take a look at Josh Oliver at 200. He's actually played more snaps than Isaiah Likely. I think Josh Oliver is going to be out there regardless. Likely is the, like, if Andrews does say, if it's like a T Higgins situation where it's like we get like a quarter of him and then he just sits, Likely is more likely to pick up the passing routes, obviously, but Oliver's going to be out there. And, if it does become a decoy situation, Oliver's definitely someone I could see just pop up with like one. I mean, he's already got a touchdown on the year, so it's already happened. Pop up with like one red zone route and just grab it. I think he's very much in play. Again, we're talking about big GPP lineups, mixing it into your player pool. However, but Oliver would be a dude I would be targeting for that situation. And again, pairs very well with the Lamar Jackson captain, because where is he getting the touchdowns? Coming from Lamar Jackson. So I think he's in play. I mean, after Rudolph, though, I mean, I like that's it for me. I mean, I don't have any really reason. I don't know what, like, is Isabella going to be on the field? I don't even know. Like, he's active. I don't think so. So it's really just Josh Oliver. Oliver's going to be out there. He's playing snaps. He's played over 30% of the snaps. That's what we want. We want a guy with a heartbeat on the field at 200. So.
What about before we move on for this game, in the interest of time, just from a betting standpoint over on DraftKings Sportsbook, any prop bets or anything that jumps out at you, Gary, that you're eyeing in particular tonight?
I mean, I'll just say this. I was on the Ravens when the spread was, minus 1.5. So the fact that it's now +2, I will gladly take the Ravens on the money line at plus money. Maybe I'm still a sucker because they continue to turn in underwhelming performance after underwhelming performance, but
so do the Bucs.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's not like the Bucs have really given you any reason to be all that optimistic about their outlook tonight. And I believe Tampa is 0-5 ATS their past 5 games overall. They're 0-4 ATS their past 4 home games. And again, I'm just going to keep beating this drum. Like, the Ravens are always leading. They're always winning the games. At some point, it's almost like point differential in basketball or run differential in baseball. Like, at some point, just consistently destroying the other team over a large period of time just means something to me. And the fact that the Ravens consistently are just winning the game constantly. Yes, they've coughed a few away. It's annoying, but they seem like they've been the better team in almost every game they've played so far this season. And this might be the first time they're legitimately playing someone who has a more talented roster than they do. But with the concerns of the Buccaneers, the very similar concerns the Buccaneers have been having so far in 2022, I'm fine in general just kind of taking whatever team was plus money in this game, because I think it's pretty evenly matched. And now that it's the Ravens, where I was kind of leaning that direction anyway, I'm pretty happy at plus 110 on the money line.
Jeff?
I mean, pretty much exact opposite of everything. I
liked
the Bucs when they were plus money on the money line, and I'm still going to play them at -2. I think that the Ravens just have so much going on with the injury issues. This is going to be a tough spot for them. I don't know how they're going to move the ball if they do end up behind in this game. I think they're toast. I think if they do even ever get behind in this game, it may be over. They're going to need Lamar to do something spectacular, and I'm not sure if he's up for it right now. So I think that, there's legit question marks. I mean, like I'm asking the Buccaneers to do something, which is like be confident out of the gates here and get their passing offense together. But I think they can do that against the Ravens. I think that there's matchups with Auten. There's just matchups across the field. I mentioned White out of the backfield. I like his reception prop at over 2.5 at plus money still. I would take that. And, I think that this is a spot where Brady will, and they'll get it together. It hasn't looked good, but I'm just not sure what the Ravens are going to bring on either side. And it worries me a little bit. The Ravens are a good, really good regular season team. And they're not a team I like to fade very often, but against teams that are, as Gary alluded to this, kind of more talented than them, they are not very good. Like they're not good at getting big wins. That's why they've just flamed out in the playoffs. So good at beating up weak teams. I think this is a spot where the Ravens probably put up an L. That's just my take on this game. But I'm obviously putting my faith in an offense that put up 3 points. What did they put up against Carolina? 3 points? I don't even remember. It was
3 points.
Blacked out during that game.
They did. They could have had a touchdown if they had gone for it.
They could have. Yes. If Mike Evans wasn't, if his hands weren't made of oil, I guess.
Yeah.
So if we move off of that game tonight, if anyone has any thoughts, questions, whatever it is, mix them in Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, wherever you're finding us, and we'll work them in before we get out of here. But obviously the biggest news from the NFL today in terms of health is not the return of Julio Jones, but the departure, at least for now, of Jamar Chase, out 4 to 6 weeks for the Bengals. Huge loss for that team and for that offense. He's coming off of arguably his 2 best games of the year against the Falcons and the Saints. 15 catches on 21 targets, 262 yards, 4 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. He's been absolutely incredible, and we know that chemistry that he and Joe Burrow have. So, Garion, what does that mean for this offense going forward here over the next month and a half for a team that obviously was, right there at the end last season?
I mean, it's not great. I think this is definitely a situation where, your expectations across the board with the Bengals are slightly lower, even if other players are getting a higher share of the volume. They're probably not going to score as many points as they would with Jamar Chase in the lineup. They're probably not as successful in terms of a, yardage basis or a per play basis as they were with Jamar Chase in the lineup. But at the same time, they still have one of the deepest wide receiving rooms in the NFL. I think T. Higgins now becomes probably a borderline wide receiver 1. You look at what is now missing from this Bengals offense. Across the past 4 weeks, you're essentially looking at a 30% target share, a 40% air yard share, and the largest percentage of red zone targets on the team. So even if Higgins inherits half of that on top of what he was already getting, that's just an incredible fantasy player on a week-to-week basis. Maybe you see Hayden Hurst a little bit more involved than he had been in the past. Maybe you see less 3 wide receiver sets. I mean, I know Zach Taylor really loves to kind of run those that 11 personnel, kind of the Los Angeles system that we've seen McVay use for a half decade now. Maybe even Joe Mixon again gets a little bit more involved in the passing game. I mean, Mixon's touches really aren't that big a concern. They haven't been the problem. His snap count hasn't really been a problem either, but maybe he gets 1 or 2 more targets in the passing game than he normally would. So, I think it's pretty much just like more volume across the board for everyone, but the offense is going to struggle a little bit more than it would if Jamar Chase were healthy.
You echo those thoughts, Jeff, or anything to add to them?
No, for sure. The timeline here is important too, I think, for futures. I think that, again, Gary alluded to this. It's a deep wide receiver room. Like Tyler Boyd, I think people just forget how good Tyler Boyd was in his first couple of years before these other younger wide receivers came. He's really good wide receivers, really good. He's an oversized slot receiver, and he is going to get some serious work here from Joe Burrow, who connected with him in the last game. And I think that's really going to help them get over this. Mentioned Hayden Hurst too. That was probably a smart pickup by the Bengals. It looks really smart right now because they're going to need him. Could maybe see Chris Evans, who's a passing back. He's kind of down the depth chart, but he's got some. He's a good, like, they use him in the punt return game. Don't be shocked if he pops up. I think the biggest thing though is the schedule. Browns twice over the next 6 weeks. Titans, Steelers. That's not a big deal. And the Panthers, and then you got the Chiefs mixed in. That's doable. Like that's very doable. And if they get him back for the Buccaneers game, the last 4 games, I mean, I just like the Bengals to me have looked really good the last 2 weeks. Joe Burrow's looked really good. The protection is up. If that holds up, I think they're going to get through this. I'd actually be looking at them at futures when the odds come back up. The division odds aren't up right now. I still like this team over Baltimore. I have all season. And when they come up, I'll probably take a look at it. So I think they'll get through this. I think they have the depth, and Jamar Chase is obviously a big blow, but if they can get him back in any health for the stretch run, they should be okay.
How about in the short term with this Halloween Monday night game against Cleveland?
Yeah, I mean, like, again, Cleveland is just, this. I think this has a potential to be a little bit higher scoring as well. Cleveland's giving up a lot of big plays. Nick Chubb's going to do his thing, but again, like T. Higgins is out there. I mean, T. Higgins is really good, and then you've got Boyd working the slot. I think those guys are going to dominate here. I really do, and I think you'll see Joe Burrow put in another good game. Probably be a little bit close. Got the Bengals on the road, but I'm not too worried. I mean, this is a deep. They have 3 really good wide receivers. They're down 1, but they have guys who can step up as well.
Gary?
Yeah, I mean, I would still probably take the Bengals. I think the Browns have, it's sort of been under the radar because our brains are so attuned to process like skill position injuries more than defensive injuries, but the Browns have been dealing with a lot on that side of the football. I think Denzel Ward is still not practicing. Like, they've got some serious issues there. They've looked shaky at best offensively, which is understandable given the circumstances. But yeah, like I think the Bengals missing Jamar Chase is massive. I don't want to like underplay the importance of that. But again, if you were to ask the Bengals, what position do you feel most equipped to handle a significant injury? It definitely would have been wide receiver. So again, not good news. But of the news you could have gotten, probably like the best case, worst scenario, if that makes sense.
Any interest of time? We've
probably
got,
better than losing like a piece of their O-line. Sorry, I was.
100%.
Sure. Just while we have a few minutes left, World Series is starting tomorrow in Houston. The Astros are the favorites going in, Gary. And I know baseball near and dear to your heart. The Phillies in there for the first time in about. Not the World Series, but the playoffs, first time in about a decade. Obviously won the World Series back in 2008 and now trying to, ride Bryce Harper's shoulders to another championship. We'll see if that's able to happen. What are your game 1 thoughts?
Yeah, 2 props that I've kind of identified for game 1. Aaron Nola, over 16.5 outs recorded. I've been really liking these outs recorded props during the playoffs. They're always a little bit lower, because in the playoffs, there's a shorter leash with some of these pitchers. You would also think that with 4 off days prior to game 1, plus a scheduled off day on Sunday, that both of these managers will be, pretty liberal with their bullpens. They don't exactly have to worry about usage and working in rest and overworking these guys, considering how this World Series was scheduled. At the same time, the Phillies aren't like the 2015 Kansas City Royals, where it's just like, just get through 5 and the bullpen will take care of the rest. There's some serious question marks about their bullpen. And I think they've shown throughout the playoffs, their game plan is to ride Nola and ride Wheeler as long as they can. And Aaron Nola is someone who his final 29 starts the regular season, 24 of them, he recorded at least 6 innings of work. He went at least 6 innings. His first 2 starts the playoffs, then was kind of BABIP to death in the National League Championship Series against the Padres. -120. So there's a little bit of juice on this thing, but I think he goes well over 16.5 outs just because that's what the Phillies need him to do. It's also worth noting his last start of the regular season was against the Astros, 6 2/3, 2 hits allowed, 9 strikeouts, no runs in that particular game. So he's shown an ability to dominate a lineup of this caliber, this specific lineup in particular. The other bet I like, Kyle Schwarber under half a hit at +110. Schwarber is someone obviously known for his power. He's a 3 true outcomes player. So that kind of really comes into your hands here, considering, if he's going to take walks or strike out, that's perfect. If you need him under a half a hit in general, only hit 218 this season. He's hitting 200 so far in the playoffs. The other thing to think about, Justin Verlander was the best pitcher in baseball against left-handed batters this season, held them to a 235 expected WOBA. That was the lowest of anyone who faced at least 250 left-handed batters over the course of 2020. Lefties hit just 170 off of Justin Verlander this season. So I think it's a really bad matchup for Schwarber, someone who doesn't get a lot of hits anyway. So I will take the plus money under half a hit.
Moose, how about a little hockey? We got a fairly robust slate in the NHL tonight. About 2/3 of the league are playing, including my Bruins and your Oilers, though not against each other. And we now live in a world where Phil Kessel is the Iron Man in NHL history. What stands out to you tonight?
Hey, man. Yeah, the hot dog diet proving itself once again. So quickly, I like the Stars. I think the Stars are really good value. I do not know why this team is only minus 130 tonight. Jake Ottinger is like head of the Vezina Trophy race right now, or top four. Dallas is way better than the Capitals over the first couple weeks in terms of expected goal for percentage. So creating chances at 5-on-5, essentially. Capitals are down 4 of their top 9 forwards. And this game is almost a pick on it. It makes no sense. I actually like just taking the Stars in the puck line at plus 200. I just think this line is too big. And then I'll throw out a couple futures here just for fun. Ilya Sorkin, Vezina Trophy winner, plus 1,600, coming off like a 40 save shutout last night against the Rangers. He's had one bad game, but he's been really good in all the rest. The only reason he's at plus 600 is because his win-loss record's a little down. If that comes up, these odds are going to get cut in half really quickly. And then the New Jersey Devils. This one's really simple to make the playoffs. I don't know why it's at plus 150, but this team's been really, really good. They're creating chances 5-on-5. They're limiting shots. Their goaltending has been terrible to start the year, but they're still winning games. This will come down to, this will be a pick 'em soon. Plus 150, I would get on this.
All right, very good. Well, it's going to about do it for the Thursday sports edition of the slate. We covered a lot, which is always a good thing. It's why we're here, but it also only tees you up for not only the evening to make your picks for, in particular, Thursday night football tonight and build those lineups in that millionaire contest, but also you got the sweat tomorrow to set you up for the main slate. More reaction to that Jamar Chase injury, I'm sure. And of course, reaction to tonight's football game to kick off week 8 and a look ahead to the World Series, which again, first pitch is tomorrow night in Houston. The slate will be back with you tomorrow afternoon, same time as always, after the 4:00 Madden Sim. And that will be a much deeper dive on the main slate for Sunday. So should be good. But Eamon, our producer, AC, our technical director, Gary and Moose, I'm Adam. Thanks for being with us, guys. Appreciate you. We'll see you later.